Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of witness Kum Hui. Ms. Sakabuti, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals to today's proceedings. Greffier, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Mr. Nunchi is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to continue his testimony today, that is Mr. Hum Hui, as well as Mr. Mom Rati, his duty counsel, are present in the courtroom, and we do not have a reserved witness today. President, thank you, Ms. Sakabuti. The chamber now decides on the request by Nunchi. The chamber has received a waiver from Nunchi dated 4 May 2016, which states that due to his health, that is headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his presence at the 4 May 2016 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nunchi by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC, dated 4 May 2016, which states that Nunchi has back pain and feels dizzy when he moves, and recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that Nunchi can follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Nunchi his request to follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via and audio-visual means. The chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Nunchi can follow. That applies to the whole day. And again, I'd like to hand the floor to the co-prosecutors to continue putting further questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Counsel, and good morning, Mr. Witness. I want to turn now to the topic of political meetings or study meetings. During your time at S21, did you participate in any political meetings or study meetings? And if so, can you tell us who ran them and what topics were discussed?
Allow me to respond to your question. After I was assigned to work at S21, we were required to attend political study sessions to distinguish between the enemy and friends, and be absolute not to allow enemy to escape or to act against us. And we had to acknowledge that people who were arrested by Angkar were enemies. All staff at S21, including the guards and the interrogators, had to attend those study sessions.
You just said that you were told that you had to accept that people arrested by Angkar were enemies. Did that apply to all people arrested by Angkar? Was everyone arrested by Angkar an enemy?
For example, those who were arrested from Division 703, personally, I didn't believe that they were enemy. And I myself was scared too, since I used to be with them. And to my knowledge, they did not involve or were not CIA agent or UN agents, and why they were arrested. They said that people who were arrested by Angkar were the enemy against Angkar.
And you also mentioned that you were told you had to be absolute. What did that mean for guards, and what did that mean for interrogators, if you know?
Personally, I still have a doubt about that, and I did not have confidence in that because people were arrested according to to their network. For me, I work at S21, and if someone was arrested and implicated others, those other people would also be arrested later on.
I want to just focus on the word absolute. You said that you were told that you had to be absolute. What did you understand that to mean?
While I was working there, we were required to monitor others' activities, and we had to attend the meeting every day, and we had to report to Angkar if something strange happened, and that we had to follow their instructions, and if we violated it, then we would be arrested.
Who ran the study sessions that you attended? Who was the teacher or instructor?
There were Ho and Dodge. In particular, it was Dodge who actually gave us his director sessions.
And were you told anything specifically about the prisoners in S21? Were they enemies, or were some of them enemies, or were none of them enemies? What were you told about that?
I personally did not know who were enemies and who were not. As I said, people that I used to work with were arrested and brought to the center. That's why I was scared, and I thought that that was unjust. However, they were arrested because they were implicated in the confessions of others.
And just to be clear, I'm not asking about your beliefs about whether people had committed some wrongdoing, but what did Deutsch or Ho tell you about the people in the prisons? Did they tell you whether the people in S21 were enemies or not?
During the study sessions, we were told everyone who was arrested by Angkar was the enemy who was against Angkar.
And were you told what had to happen to these people because they were enemies?
I did not know that detail. However, I saw them being brought to be interrogated, and when about 70 or 80 of them had their interrogated concluded, then they were transported out to be killed.
Were you aware of any prisoners ever being released from S21?
No, I did not know about that.
I want to ask you about something that you said about this in your Case 1 testimony. This is E3/7461. just after 11:29 in the morning. And you were asked that same question, whether you knew about anyone being released. And you said, quote, "I have never seen anyone who was arrested and sent to S21 was released because everyone who was arrested and sent there would end up being dead," unquote. So my question is this, the fact that everyone who was sent to S21 ended up dead, was that something that you observed, or was that something you were told was a matter of policy by Deutsch or Ho or anyone else?
It was the instruction from the trainers, that is Ho and Deutsch, in particularly Deutsch. He said anyone who was brought to S21 would not had a chance to go out, and that the person would be killed.
So you just said that you heard that from Deutsch. Did anyone else say that other than Deutsch? That is, that anyone who was brought to S21 would be killed.
There was no one else besides Deutsch, because Deutsch provided his his trainings at a school to the south of his house.
During your time at S21, either in these study sessions or elsewhere, did you ever hear a phrase to the effect that when you dig the grass, you have to dig the root as well?
Yes, I heard about that, and it was Deutsch who gave us that instruction that if you dig the grass, you have to dig the root as well. It means that if someone was arrested, then people connected to his network had to be arrested.
And you said people connected to his network. Who would that include? Who would be connected to someone's network?
For example, those from 703, if the commander of Division 703 was arrested and interrogated, and if staff from 703 were implicated in his confessions, then those staff would be arrested.
And what about family members of people who were arrested? Were family members of people arrested considered part of a network?
Deutsch taught us that if people were arrested, then all those links to his network had also to be arrested, including the wife, the family members, or the mothers or fathers.
Mr. President, with the chamber's leave, I'd like to play a short video. The AV booth has this clip. It is E3/536R from 27 minutes and 5 seconds to 27 minutes and 22 seconds. And it's a part of an interview with this witness.
Yes, you may proceed, and the AV booth, please prepare and play the short video clip as prepared by the Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
People.
We pushed them onto the trucks.
Every evening, a truck delivered a batch of prisoners to the killing field.
Mr. President, I don't think this is the correct video clip that we're seeing here.
I wrote down the names of the prisoners and sent them one after.
Deputy Co-Prosecutor, have you prepared that clip for the AV booth?
I prepared a number of clips today. This one was identified as clip 2. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll just double check quickly to make sure I've got the right one.
Led to more confessions.
They would arrest and kill the entire families of alleged traitors. No one was spared. They would arrest the wives, husbands, and children, and even brothers, sisters, and other relatives.
So, Mr. Hamhoy, there we just saw you saying essentially what you've told us just now, that entire families of traitors were arrested. You also just told us that you received this instruction, or rather you were told that this was a policy by Doik. Did you see this policy being implemented? In other words, did you see families of prisoners being brought in along with the prisoners?
As I have stated, those who links to the network were also arrested, including the wives, the family members. If one person was arrested and imprisoned, then they would do a research to arrest those who linked to his network.
And this is something that you yourself saw in addition to hearing about the policy. Is that correct?
I did not know that well. However, I knew for sure that Hui, that I knew, was arrested, and his wife and children were also arrested.
Okay. For Council's reference, this next question is based on E3/1693, English page 00192723. French 00357310, and Khmer page 00191879. So, Mr. Witness, I'm going to ask you about another phrase or saying. During your time at S21, did you ever hear the phrase, "It is better to arrest 10 people by mistake than to let one guilty person go free?
That proverb or saying was taught to us by Dutch at the political study sessions, that it's better to arrest 10 people rather than by mistake to release one individual.
And at these study sessions you attended, did they explain to you what the relationship was between Angkar and people such as yourself who worked at S21? What was the relationship between you and Angkar?
I did not know about that. When we were instructed to go for study sessions, we went to attend the study sessions, and I did not know about the relationship that you put to me.
I'll ask you about something that you said in your Case 1 testimony to perhaps clarify my question. This is E3/7462, just after 11:38 a.m. And this is what you said. You said, quote, "We're the children of Angkar, we're the children of the party, and we are not the children of our own parents. So when we carry out our work, we have to respect the Angkar in every single activity, walking, standing, working, or sleeping. And whoever fails to abide by the regulations, then that person would be considered an enemy and would be arrested and detained," unquote. So do you recall being told this, that you were the children of Angkar and had to respect Angkar in every activity?
Yes, I recall it. During the study sessions, there were many participants, including myself, that we were the children of Angkar and not the children of our parents, although our mothers were the ones who bear us, but it was Angkar who were our real children, and that we had to implement any instruction or activity imposed by Angkar.
And how did this instruction affect the way you felt about your work at S21? Did you feel that you had any choice in implementing the orders or instructions you received?
When I saw all events unfolding at S21, and around 1977, Son Sen came to convene the meeting at S21, and I stood up and made a request to him. I raised my hand, and that I request to return to the army, and he asked whether I dare to attack the Yuan, and I said yes. And I said that I thought that it's better for me to die in the battlefield if that is the case, only me who died. And if I was arrested at S21, it means my family members and parents would also be arrested. President Witness Hum Hoi, you do not respond directly to the question, because the question is whether you had a choice to choose any other kind of work during the period of Democratic Cambodia regime, in particular when you worked at S21, whether you had a choice or not to follow the work assignment by Angkar. For example, even if you were at S21, could you have an option not to do this work and you prefer to do another task of work? Did you have that choice or option at the time? Answer: while I was at S21, I was selected to become an interrogator, and I said that I did not know how to interrogate the people, and in addition I did not know how to write, so that I could not make a report on the confession during the interrogation. And that's what happened there while I was working at S21.
It sounds like you've just described a situation in which you weren't given a job because you didn't have the necessary qualifications. My question is slightly different. When you received an order or an instruction from Peng or from Paul or from Paul or Doik, did you feel that you had any choice in the matter? Could you have decided not to follow the order or instruction if you didn't want to?
I could not to implement the instructions. So I was not selected to be an interrogator, and that per my request. So I was then assigned to be a guard, and I saw those people who were arrested and brought to the center, and I believe that was the only choice that I had at the time.
And just one last question on these study sessions. You said that they were attended by guards and interrogators. Were they attended by all of the guards and all of the interrogators, or just some of them?
During the study sessions, we all studied together at the political school located to the south of Dutch House.
And other than guards and interrogators, were any other S21 staff members present there?
No. There were only those who worked at S21, and there were also other staff who came from the rice field.
Okay, I want to turn now to the topic of children at S21. Can you tell us, first of all, were children detained at S21? And if so, where were they detained? Who were they detained with? And what were the conditions in which they were detained?
Children were detained along with their mothers.
And I want to ask you now about something you said in one of your interviews with the investigators. This is E3/5154, English 0016 1603, Khmer 0014 6651, and French 0014 8099. This is what you said, quote, "The children were with the mothers. The mothers were not shackled. They were put in a large cell. I know this because when there were many imprisoned, they had me help watch. And I saw the people in the large cells. Tahoa was stationed there." Unquote. So, in that portion, you said that you were asked to help watch the mothers and children when many were imprisoned. What did you mean by many? On the occasions when you were asked to help watch the mothers and children, how many mothers and children were detained in that large cell you refer to?
When hundreds of people were arrested and brought in. I was asked to go to monitor them along the rooms, but I cannot recall the total number of prisoners.
And I'm interested not so much in the total number of prisoners, but in the total number of mothers with children that were detained in this large cell you described. When these large groups of prisoners were brought in, are you able to estimate how many children would be a part of one of those large groups on average?
I cannot recall the total number of the mothers and children. I walked past and looked around at the time and then went back to my location.
And you've told us that you were asked to do this when large groups of prisoners were brought in. How often or how many times did that happen, that a large enough group was brought in that you were asked to help monitor the group when they arrived?
When they were arrested, they were sent from different directions, and at the time they were afraid that there were no enough guards to secure their detention. That is why I was also required to go and monitor. So we took shifts at the time, going around and secure the detention of those people.
And can you tell us what happened to these children that were brought in as part of the large groups?
I don't know about that.
Do you know whether those children were eventually killed?
I heard Payne say that those children were killed and executed behind the prison.
And when he said that they had been killed and executed behind the prison, do you know what location he was referring to? And I guess my specific question is, we talked yesterday about a killing location just to the west of the high school compound and a killing location to the south of the high school compound. Do you know whether he was referring to one of those or to some other location?
It was right behind the prison. A Payne group told me about that.
And I'll just read again something from one of your WRIs. This is E3/5154, English 0016-1603, Khmer 0014-6651, French 0014-8099. This is what you said. But Pang took them and killed them, referring to the children. Pang took them and killed them right inside the Tool Slang compound. They were taken and killed by him and the forces along with him and buried approximately 100 meters north and behind the prison, unquote. So is that correct? Was the burial location of these children about 100 meters north of the prison? Or are you not sure about that now?
To north of the prison and also to the west of the prison, those locations were the execution sites.
Mr. President. it's a bit late objecting to the last question because it took me a while to find the excerpt, but for the completeness of this witness' earlier testimony, I would like to refer to transcript E150 at 11:47. The witness said, and I quote, regarding the children of the mothers who were detained and executed, I don't think I have any idea about them. I think Peng with his group conducted or carried out the operation at Tul Sleng. So in this particular evidence, he seems to be speculating and guessing. So I think for the completeness of the record, that should be confronted to the witness as well.
I think we can deal with the question of speculation simply by asking the witness what his source of knowledge is. Mr. Witness, how do you know that these children were killed and buried at this location 100 meters north of the high school compound?
As I told the court, Peng told me about that. Peng's group was the group which executed those prisoners. And after the killings of those children, the mother had been transported to Chương Ai.
And do you know why the children were killed there in Tul Sleng, even at the time when the parents were sent to Chiang Ai, so obviously at a time after Chiang Ai had been set up? In other words, why weren't the children sent along with the parents to Chiang Ai, if you know?
Let me tell you, they would be afraid of the secret would be leaked off, because if the children had been sent together with the parents, those children would have cried along the way, and that information would be leaked to the garment workers and others who were working along the road.
And I just want to make sure I understand your testimony about the killing locations close to the high school compound. As I understood it yesterday, you referred to one location to the west and one location to the south, and now you're referring to a location to the north. So, to your knowledge, were there 3 killing locations close to the high school compound, or am I misunderstanding you?
I learned about killing locations from Peng.
Okay. What ages of children are we referring to? What ages of children did you personally see detained at Tul Sleng?
The age range was between 1 to 5 or 6 years old.
Mr. President, with the Chamber's leave, I have another video clip that I'd like to play. I don't know if it's better for me to write down the number or just read it out. It comes from E3/2357R, and it's from 40 minutes and 48 seconds to 41 minutes and 15 seconds. And again, this is footage of an interview with this witness.
President, yes, please. Every technician, please project the video clip on the request of the Deputy Court Prosecutor on the screens.
They told the mothers that they would take their children to the children's centre, and the mothers had to let it happen. My boss, Mr. Peng, he took charge of the children. His men took them not far from here, and then killed them.
Now, Mr. Witness, at the beginning of that clip, we heard you say that the mothers were told that their children were being taken to a children's center. Can you tell us how you know that the mothers were told that?
Let me clarify the point once again. Could you please repeat your question, rather?
Yes, absolutely. In that clip, you said that mothers were told that their children were being taken to a children's center. In fact, they were taken away by Peng and killed. My first question is, how do you know that the mothers were told this? How do you know that the mothers were told that their children were being taken to a children's center? Did you actually hear this being said to mothers? Did you actually say this to some of the mothers?
Peng told me that these children were to be taken to a children's center. If it had not been told as such, the mother would have learned about what we were going to do with the children. So we had to, he said we had to tell the mothers that those children needed to be sent to a children's center.
And maybe this is an obvious question, but why was it important to use this ruse to tell the mothers that their children were being taken to a children's center rather than telling them that their children were being taken to be killed?
That was the rule and regulation of S21. The mother should not be learned that the children were sent for such action, but to a children's center.
Mr. President, I have another video clip. This one is E3/536R from 27 minutes and 38 seconds to 28 minutes and 15 seconds.
President, please, and AV technician, please project video clip on the screens as requested by the co-prosecutor.
I would send off children aged 7 or 8 years old. They were killed in the same way as the adults. The children were also blindfolded, and their hands were tied behind their backs.
So, Mr. Witness, there are two things that I'd like to ask you about that clip. The first one is, we heard you say, I would send off children aged 7 or 8 years old. At least that's how your words were translated into English. Is that accurate? Would you help to gather up this group of children for Peng?
At that time, it was the time that the parents needed to be sent to Trường Ai, and on that occasion, before I was to send the parents to Trường Ai, I went with my men to bring the children downstairs. And so he, at the time, gave me a list of parents to be sent to Chiang Ai. And for children, they were given to pay for the action, and the parents were then uploaded onto the vehicle.
And on that particular occasion you've just mentioned, when you brought the children downstairs, did you actually hand them over to Pang at that point, or did you just leave them there and head off to Chiang Ai with the parents?
At the time, I was waiting with my group members to gather parents to be sent to Chiang Ai, and I was asked to bring down the children onto the ground floor, and then I handed over the children to Peng, and I headed to Chiang Ai with the parents on the vehicle.
The other thing I want to ask you about from that clip is you say they were killed in the same way as the adults. Can you tell us, first of all, how you know that they were killed in the same way as the adults? And second of all, what is that way of killing?
It is my assumption the killings or executions would have been taken place in the same method.
And can you just tell us what that method was? Understanding that your knowledge comes from the killing of adults rather than children. What was the method of killing for adults?
My assumption is that the killings of children and elderly or older and adults were in the same methods. There were iron bar, carve, and the knives. These were the equipment or tools for killing those people. After those people were clubbed, then their throats would be slashed.
And the last thing you said in that clip was that the children were blindfolded and their hands were tied behind their back. Were they already blindfolded and had their hands tied at the time you handed them over to Peng?
At the time, it happened on the same occasion. The children and the parents should be sent away together, and at first I was told that the parents should be sent downstairs, and I was asked to collect the children to the ground floor. President interrupts. I think the question is different. Were the children blindfolded and their hands were tied behind their back as the adults? Answer. For the older children, their hands were tied behind their back because they were afraid that those children would try to escape.
And what about babies? What about very young children? Were there very young children in this group that you took and handed over to Peng on this occasion?
Those people carried the babies, and for the older children, some of them were also carried.
Did you help to carry down any of the babies?
No. The security guards inside those were the one who carried down those babies. And for me and my group, I was responsible for sending the parents to Chiang Ai. But on that day, I was asked to go and bring down the children.
And Mr. President, just one last video clip on this topic. This is E3/536R, and the time code is 28 minutes, 45 seconds through 29 minutes, 15 seconds. So if that could be played with the chamber's leave.
President, yes, please. AV, technician, please project the video clip as requested by the Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Later, I saw guards carrying 3, 4, or 5 babies in their arms. I met one of the men who took those babies away. It was Him Hoi. He said the babies were taken to their deaths.
The babies were killed as well. They weren't spared.
So, Mr. Witness, in the first part of that video, we saw not you speaking, but a man named Van Nat, and he said that he saw guards carrying 3, 4, or 5 babies in their arms, and that he met you, and that you were one of the people taking the babies away. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And he also said that you later told him that those babies were killed. Do you recall telling Van Nat at some point that those babies had been killed?
The children were taken out first before the parents were uploaded onto the vehicle, and I went together with the parents to Chiang Ai.
And we're using the term babies here, but can you be a bit more specific about the ages that we're talking about? And maybe a good way to judge it is, were there children who were too young to walk?
They were babies. They were between 1 month and older, and the age range was between the 1 month up to 7 or 8 years old.
Okay. I'd like to turn to another topic now. We've been talking about children. Now I want to talk about the killing of Vietnamese soldiers, not at Chiang Ai, but at the compound in Tuol Sleng. Were you aware of Vietnamese soldiers ever being killed at the compound in Tuol Sleng?
The Vietnamese soldiers who had been arrested were killed later on in the compound of Tuol Sleng to the west, rather to the south.
And who was it who killed these Vietnamese soldiers in the area to the south of the high school compound?
Base group was the group who killed those people.
And do you know on approximately how many occasions Peng's group killed Vietnamese soldiers there at Tuol Sleng?
I do not know about that. The Vietnamese soldiers who had been arrested were around 40 or 50 or 60.
And those 40, 50, or 60, were they arrested on one occasion, or was that the total number of Vietnamese soldiers over a period of time that you were aware of?
They were sent in on different time frame. I went to Svay Rieng, the East Zone, on 2 occasions. 4 or 5 of them were brought in. And later on, some Vietnamese soldiers were further sent in. And there were Vietnamese soldiers from 703 and from other direction as well. But I do not know them all.
And again, I want to ask you about something in one of your investigative statements that you said about this. This is E3/5155, English 0016, 1591, Khmer 0014, 6639, and French 0014, 8084. So you were asked a question, and the question was, related to taking prisoners to kill, did they keep the Vietnamese soldiers long before killing them? And your answer was, quote, they kept them for about half a month. After interrogation, they took them to kill. They killed them together behind Tuol Sleng. The teams that did this killing were Peng's team and mine. Unquote. So now in that quote, you say that the teams that did the killing were both Peng's team and yours. Is that correct? Were members of your team involved in killing Vietnamese soldier prisoners?
When they were sent away for execution, that group was asked to help accompany the prisoners with another group from the inside. And I did not know where they were sent to. I was only told to wait at a specific location to receive the prisoners.
So I just want to make sure I understand you. Were there members of your team? In other words, were there people who were under your authority involved in the actual physical killing of Vietnamese soldiers at the Tuol Sleng compound?
I do not know, and I did not question further about the execution. My men and I were told to work together with the security guards from inside to receive prisoner and send them away. Each and every one of them was sent one at a time.
Okay, I want to turn to another topic now. And to start with, I'll just ask you about someone we discussed yesterday named Poach. Can you tell us what happened to Poach at S21?
Poach was with the 100-man unit of the Guards.
And did there come a time when he was arrested?
I cannot recall it exactly, but it was around 1977.
And can you describe that arrest and the events that followed for us in brief terms?
Regarding the arrest of the internal staff working there, I did not know, but I only noticed that people disappeared when we went for our meal time.
Was anyone else arrested, to your knowledge, at around the same time as Poch?
Yes, there were successive arrests. There were 3 or 4 people from the 100-man unit were arrested, including Smoon and Man, who was a Cham person. And in fact, there were 2 Cham people belonging to the 100-man unit were arrested. That is Chon and Man.
And were they arrested around the same time as Poch? In other words, was it part of a single event?
It happened probably within the same period, as one person was arrested, interrogated, and then he implicated another person, and that person was immediately arrested.
And did anyone ever tell you what happened to Poch and the other people arrested around the same time as him?
I did not know the reasons for his arrest. As I noticed, people kept disappearing as there were successive arrests. Even members within my group also had been arrested.
But did anyone ever tell you what happened to him after his arrest? Did you ever get any information about that?
I didn't receive information from anyone since nobody said anything about those arrests. We saw people arrested and they were forced to be interrogated, and of course we were very concerned about ourselves.
I want to read something to you from one of your investigative statements. This is E3/5158, English 0016 4451, French 0016 4454, and Khmer 0016 4447. So the question to you was, have you received any news about Poch? Your answer was, he was arrested in 1977, probably at the order of Deutsch, since there was no one other than Deutsch, even Hall, who had the authority to issue an order to arrest anyone. And then you were asked, do you know his fate after his arrest? And your answer was, quote, at that time there was not yet a killing site at Chung Aik. During a meeting, Deutsch told us that those from the 703rd who were working at S21 and who had been implicated by prisoners from the 703rd had been arrested, interrogated, and killed in the S21 compound, unquote. So hearing that, does that refresh your memory? Do you recall attending a meeting with Deutsch at which he told you that people from the 703rd working at S21 had been arrested and then subsequently killed at the Tool Slang compound?
I made my own conclusion that the people from 703 who were arrested implicated both. So both were subsequently arrested. And successive arrests were later on made, but I did not know who implicated them. As for the arrests themselves, Deutsch issues the order to Ho and Ho to Peng, and subsequently those arrests were made. President, thank you, Deputy Co-Prosecutor. And before we have a short break, Mr. Witness, please, you are reminded that you should not make your own conclusion in your response. You are not an expert witness, you are a simple witness. So please make your response according to what you personally observe, experience, or saw. And please don't use the word if or I conclude. And if you heard something from someone, please state that precisely. But if you make your own personal conclusion or guess, then your testimony cannot be used to ascertain the truth in this case. So please be mindful of what you say in response to the questions put to you. And you also have to acknowledge your obligation as a witness and your contribution to the ascertainment of the truth in this case. We have a short break now, and I resume at 10:30 to continue our proceedings. Court officer, please assist the witness during the break time at the waiting room for witnesses and civil parties, and invite him as well as his duty counsel back into the courtroom at 10:30. The court is now in recess.